Welcome to Legacy Sips and Tips podcast with your geeky host, Lindsay Wheeler, where we talk about everything from death, preparing for your future through estate planning, life, the occasional breakup, entrepreneurship, general nerdery, and of course travel, snowboard, and always wine. Welcome to Legacy Sips and Tips with your host, Lindsay Wheeler. And today we're going to talk about business, your business, and how it ties into estate planning and death. So today we're going to talk about business, your business. We all like business. As you guys know, I have an undergrad in international business. I have an MBA, and then I have my JD. So I do like business. I like how business is. I like to think I have business acumen, but you never know. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you have your business set up and how that ties into your estate plan and why they're both very important to have. So you've decided to start a business. What does that look like? Well, the first step is to make sure that you are actually legally set up to do business in your state. That means not just if you have a brick and mortar, it means also if you're online, you're selling things online, you're virtual, you're selling downloadables, you're selling coaching, you're selling stickers or artwork or whatever it is, making sure that you are actually legally licensed to operate a business. How that looks is there's usually different levels of that. So if you decide to start a business and you sell anything, you sell a lemonade stand, you sell a cup of lemonade to somebody, that kid on the street is now a business in the eyes of the government. They are now a sole prop, regardless of what they sell, what they do, whatever it is. The 7-year-old on the stand is now considered a business owner in the eyes of the government. So what does that mean? It means that you're a sole proprietor. You are now a business, creating business because you are doing something that is giving you money in exchange, right? From there, as a sole prop, that is one level of licensing, okay? And people think, well, I'm okay with that. That might be okay depending on what you do or what you sell and your liability that may incur from you doing that business. So most of us practitioners like to think that or encourage that if you are going to set up a business that you go a step further on that and protect yourself legally, right? So as a sole prop or a sole proprietor, you have zero legal liability protection. Somebody can sue you and all of your things that are included, whether they are part of your business or not, they are part of you and you're being sued and you have no protection. They can take it all. Please refer back to the homestead exemption episode we have done. Ding. Other than that, so you have zero liability protection. Again, you're still a business. You are licensed as a sole proprietor, but you have zero liability protection. So if someone sues you, they're going to take all of your assets, personal, business, whatever it is. How you mitigate that is you go a step up from there and you form a different type of business entity, either an LLC, which is a limited liability company, or you do a corporation. There are advantages, disadvantages of either type. Always do your research on that of what would feel good for you. There are tax implications as well that go into those things. So usually the next step up is a basic LLC, limited liability company. That does now afford you liability protection for your business. And how that happens is that you and your business are now going to be two separate, distinct entities. And you're going to run your business or your LLC accordingly to that. You are not going to commingle any of your personal items. You're not going to use your business for personal things. You're not going to put them together. They're going to remain separate and distinct. And the reason for that is that if you do get sued, we want to be sued just through that business, and only business assets are going to be able to be collected for a judgment or what have you. We don't want that judgment creditor, that person suing us, to be able to take our personal assets and our items, like our home, our vehicles, our bank accounts. We want them to only be able to take those business assets if that time happened. How we do that again is making sure that everything is kept separate and distinct. The court calls that theory or whatever called piercing the corporate veil. That is basically saying that everything is so commingled that there is no distinction between you as an individual and you as the business. You are one and the same. So we as a judgment creditor can now take all of it. So that's why it's very important to run your business like a business. Same thing as if you were a manager for somebody else's business. Obviously, Starbucks is not paying for, I don't even know, housekeeping or whatever it is, a personal expense, right? They're not paying for daycare for their kid. That's not how that works, right? Starbucks is only paying for business expenses, buying cups, buying products, paying their employees. Totally separate and distinct things, okay? So that's how that works. So think about that there. Then the step up from there, or a different type of legal entity, is that corporation. So you can set up that corporation. And again, the reason for that, there's pros and cons. There are different requirements for each of them. Corporation has a little bit more requirements with having a board, having members, having annual meetings, what have you. But always check with your CPA or financial advisors on this, because there may be tax advantages of those different types of entities that you want to look into. So an LLC has different types of tax advantages on how things are taxed. Usually if you're a sole prop moving into an LLC, there are no distinction for taxes. You're a sole member LLC, and that's how you're going to be taxed. However, there is a thing called an S Corp, and that's a misnomer because people think, oh, that's a corporation. I have an S Corp corporation. No. An S Corp is a tax election. It is not a business entity. And so an S Corp affords tax advantages on how you are taxed. So you would then create your business, you have an LLC, you do that tax S Corp election, and then now your business creates you as an employee. You're on a payroll through your business, just like you would if you were Starbucks, if you will, and you're going to pay yourself. And then the business has its own income, and so you're taxed at two separate rates. So that's the advantage of that. Again, always check with your CPA, your financial advisors, for which would be the best fit for you. Once you go up to an S Corp election, you cannot go back down. So double check that. We usually look at that within your earnings. Once you reach a certain threshold for that tax liability, that's usually a good time to then transition over to an S Corp and put yourself on payroll and pay those payroll taxes, which are going to be less than you paying full individual taxes on that income. Okay. So that is your first step, is getting you legally legitly set up with your business entity and how you're going to run your business. So now you're legally legit with your state. You have an LLC, you've gone to your Secretary of State for your state, and you have incorporated your business in some form or a manner. Okay. From there, regionally or locally, you also may have business licensing requirements. So going to your county or wherever you conduct your business and making sure that you have your state license or your county license or city license, if those are required for you to conduct business in that area. If you're doing business in other states, oftentimes you will have to incorporate in those states because you are availing yourself to the resources of that state, and of course the governments want their money. So again, always check with that, making sure that if you are doing business in other states, that you are fulfilling the requirements of that state to do business there as well. Okay. Next set is great. You've got the paperwork, you've got your licensing, you're all set up. Depending also on your industry, you may need additional licenses. Maybe you're selling alcohol or doing something like that, or serving the public, food licensing or whatever. So always double check on that if you were touching the client or touching people in some form or a manner, whether with beverages, food, or physically touching them. You may have additional licensing requirements that are required of you to make sure that people are covered. Okay. From there, great. Now you're going to start marketing. You have a website, you are doing your marketing or whatever it is. Certain industries have certain requirements through their state or for the federal government on what they're able to do and not do in their advertising. So always double check that. With that, almost everybody has a website. That is your calling card or your way for people to get a hold of you. Maybe they purchase through that website. There are federal requirements that are federally required. There's no way to get around them if you have a website, and that is called our privacy policy. That is mandatory. That is 100% mandatory, and you could be heavily fined if you do not have a privacy policy on your website. Typically, we have 3 items on our website. We have a privacy policy, which of course is mandatory. We have our terms and conditions that spell out how you do your business with your people, and you have a disclaimer, things that you are not going to do, if you will. Those are always set in the footer of your website, finding it easily accessible to get to. And what do those look like? So our privacy policy, again, is mandatory, and that is mandatory because the government wants to know how these websites are collecting people's data, because that's a person's personal property, essentially. That's their data. And I have clients who are like, well, I don't need that. I'm not pulling any data. I'm not selling anything. It's just information only. Spoiler alert, you're pulling data in the background that you may not even know about, that you're whoever hosting through, whoever your website's built through, they're collecting data whether you know it or not. So it is mandatory you have that privacy policy. Dealing with people over in Europe, you have that requirements for Europe on there that are more strict than here. So basically it's how you're collecting data. What do you do with that data? Do you sell that data? Are people able to opt out of having that data? That's why you always see, every website that says we have cookies, accept or deny our cookies. That is the data that is being collected that a person can opt in or opt out of as they choose or wish. And it is important that these are provided for customers, clients, anybody who's trolling the internet. Even that 7-year-old who comes on there has to have that requirement on there. Okay, very important. Then also too, with that privacy policy, there are state requirements. California has a lot of those, especially when dealing with minors. Are you selling to minors? Are you not selling to minors? Can people have access to your website who are minors? So it's a big deal of having this. There's a lot of parameters on that, so double check with that. Have a practitioner who does those types of things. Myself, we do them for people, or other resources out there. I know the Ultimate Bundle, Sam Vander Wieland, I think is her name. She does really good stuff online. There's the legal page, also is a really good resource. Destination Legal or online resources for you to get those documents or those templates that you need for your business, your online businesses. So all sorts of resources out there. There's no excuse for you not to have that on your website as the bare minimum. With that, you have your terms and conditions. That is letting people know who come to your website how you deal with them. How do you process their payments? What are the requirements? How are they able to use your stuff? What's your IP, on there? Making sure there's copyright information for your stuff, that they can't just buy your stuff and then resell it. So the second one is your terms and conditions. That is how people interact with you, and how basically like a storefront, someone comes in, remember those signs that used to be in stores about what you can and can't do? That's where that information lives. How do you process their payments? How do credit cards, do they have chargebacks ability? Today's wine, because it is a business episode, is this fun one. It's 19 Crimes, which you guys probably know. They have the most legit marketing department there. They have really cool, their first thing is about 19 crimes out of, it tells the true story of rule breakers who beat the odds, overcame adversity, and went on to become folk heroes in their society. So kind of fun. This one is the Snoop Dogg one, which I really like. It's the Cali Red. And their marketing is really clever, that they have interactive marketing. There's a couple other wine brands that do this. So you can download their app. You can put it in front of the label. And this one particularly, Snoop will talk to you, which is fun. Some of the other ones, they'll talk to you as well. There's a couple other wineries that do that. They have really cool interactive artwork maybe that happens or whatever. So it makes it pretty fun, because they're trying to differentiate themselves in a very saturated wine market these days. But these guys do a really good job. Of course, this is a fun wine to bring to a barbecue. It's a fun, Tuesday night drinker to bring to people. Or, you're just chilling on the patio on a Saturday afternoon, doing a little yard work. Bring out one of these. It's a good one to have. So a very important thing is making sure that you have your venue within your terms and conditions and your privacy policy, that if you were to be sued, you want to be sued in your home turf. So say you sell really cool fun stickers. Maybe you sell wine stickers, for instance, like cool wine bottles or something like that people buy from you, and you're selling in your home state of Nevada, and somebody doesn't like that wine bottle sticker. They got a paper cut or something, and now they're suing you. Well, if you don't have a venue clause in your terms and conditions, they could potentially serve you and have you be sued in Florida, and you're in California or whatever, or Nevada or Washington. That's across the nation, that you're gonna now have to get representation in that state. That person's on their home turf. You might have to be flying back and forth, depositions, what have you, being sued in a state that you're not familiar with. So it's very important to put a venue clause in your contract, your terms and conditions, for people to understand that if they are gonna sue you, you're gonna be sued in your home state, that they're all able to sue you outside. If they have any kind of issue, legal issue, they have to sue you in your state. Typically we'll go down and we'll say you can only be sued in the state of Nevada, county of Washoe, at the district court, federal court here, whatever it is. So we want to make sure that we're in our home state, and that's stated there. If they do business with us, they're agreeing to that. Also very important with those terms and conditions, that if somebody's buying offline for you or online with you, that you have where they have to click, that they have been made aware of these terms and conditions, they have the ability to read them, and hopefully have read these terms and conditions and click that box. Like when you download a new app from your phone or something, if you have that big box that scrolls down and it says terms and conditions, and we just always ignore that and then we click that, well, we're bound to that now because we should have read that. Okay, so that's why that's super important there. And then the third item for your website is your disclaimer. And those, again, things that you are not or going to do and the expectations of how you're going to deal with your clients. So as well with those terms and conditions, they kind of work together as well. So the disclaimers can also include things like, I'm not giving legal advice, I'm not giving medical advice, I'm not giving nutritional advice, any kind of licensing things. It just puts the buyer on notice of what exactly they're getting. So there's full transparency. So those are your requirements for your website. So first step, we've got legally legit, we've set up, we've got our licensing. Next step, we have our website compliance, if you will. And then the third step is our contracts with our clients. Client contracts, employee contracts, whatever we're dealing with, we want to have those in place as well. Very important to have those in place because the client contract spells out the relationship between you and the person you're doing business with. For example, I do a lot of work with wedding vendors. If you're a DJ, maybe you're a caterer, maybe you're a photographer, what are those expectations on that big day for this person? Do you offer, do you need to require nutrition for that day because you're at a full day wedding event and you want to have food provided for you? Break times, inclement weather, how you're going to get paid, the expectations of payment. And it sets out the rules of how you're going to do business with your clients. So not only is it the expectations of you and what you're offering, it also sets forth the agreement of how your client is going to deal with you as well. And that's very important because you want them to be able to make sure that they know that they need to pay you on time. These percentages are there. There's a non-refundable fee for retaining your services. Whatever it is, being as transparent as possible. And I like to put within my contracts when I do these, each paragraph or each section has initials right underneath it that the client has to initial that they've read it and they know that they need to sign. So client contracts are very important because they spell out the relationship that you're going to have with your client very clearly, very transparently. And again, I like to have that the client has to initial each section underneath that. And I have people go, oh my gosh, this is a really long contract. Like, people aren't going to want to sign this. This is overwhelming. Well, guess what? If they're not going to want to sign it and they're hemming and hawing about it, they're probably not your ideal client anyways, and you're not going to want to deal with them anyways. They're going to be a nightmare. They're going to be a headache. And I know when you're starting out that you're going to take everything, but it's not worth it at the end of the day. If somebody doesn't want to sign this contract or thinks it's too much or whatever it is, they're going to be a problem. They're totally going to be a problem because most people are like totally fine to sign it because now they are under the awareness of what's going to happen too. So there's no question about what you're going to do, what they're going to do, how it's going to happen. Totally cool. Very transparent. Good to have. Same thing with employment contracts, spelling out those terms and conditions of employment if you have people coming on because you're now expanding. Great to know. How does that all tie into estate planning? Well, many different ways. So usually when you set up your business, you have articles of incorporation or your operating agreement of how your business is ran, right? Especially if you have people that you're working with, you have employees, or maybe you have partners and you're working that. And if you have a partnership, please, for the love of God, go talk to somebody and make sure that that is dialed out so specifically like you were going to marry this person. And think about all the horrible things that could happen in that relationship in a business aspect and make sure that those are included in your contract for your partnership because it is very important because partnerships usually don't last. So in those articles of incorporation or those operating agreements, you will have a section in there of what happens when that member manager passes away. With that, you would do an assignment of your business interest to your estate plan as an individual. So say you have an LLC, you have your business running. In your articles of incorporation, you have a section that says what happens when a member manager passes away. That's typically you. Usually it'll say that business will be wound up. Everything will then fold over into the member's estate plan or to their heirs. Usually it's estate plan because you have done a good job and got your estate plan in place as well. So we want to make sure that if that business is going to continue without you, you have other members, you have board members, you have partners or whatever it is, that they are able to take care of your share of the business accordingly and making sure that your heirs get their receipt of your hard work. So in that articles of incorporation, you'll say what happens to a member manager when they pass away, whether, they can buy out, the company can buy out your shares, they can assume responsibility, they can have a member manager meeting or a board member meeting and making sure that your heirs are paid out accordingly to the fair market value of what you have put into that company or that business and it then transfers over to your estate plan. Again, you'll do an assignment of business interest from your estate plan saying that, hey, you own an LLC, you would like your business interest in the LLC to now then transfer over into your estate plan, and then it should seamlessly fall over in that regard. So a lot of food for thought there on getting your business set up, making sure everything works together, but that's how they work conjunctively with an estate plan. So if you're forming a business, you absolutely should have an estate plan in place, because what happens if you're not here? So not only if you pass away, your loved ones are going to have to try to figure out your business and get licensing and get on there and bank accounts and everything like that, as opposed to having your estate plan in place where that will then fold into your estate plan, and then they can deal with that outside the court process and avoid that probate process because you have done that due diligence ahead of time to make sure it's all set up for them on the back end. So of course, when you have questions about estate planning or businesses or getting your business legally legit, let me know. I'm happy to talk about that. Of course, I love talking about business. It's super fun for me. And if you don't want to work for the man anymore, let me know. We'll make that happen. And of course, when you think of death, think of me. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you found value, please like, subscribe, and share. And be sure to follow me on all the socials at Sips and Tips with Lindsay. And of course, you can always go to my website, sipsandtipswithlindsay.com, to find more information about estate planning, business, snowboard, travel, and of course, wine. As always, we have to get the legal stuff out of the way. I went to law school, so you don't have to. However, we have to read the special disclaimer that I am not a practicing attorney. I am not your attorney. I am not offering any legal advice in any content or any episode. All content is for your information and educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for seeking your own legal advice from your own attorney or other professionals such as a CPA or financial advisor. I cannot give legal advice and do not offer any legal services or legal advice, but I do offer some fun and educational content for you to enjoy.